My name's Ethan. I'm 23, fresh out of college and scraping by as a graphic design assistant at a small startup in Seattle. It's not the dream job I pictured when I was sketching logos in my dorm room, but it pays the rent on my shoebox apartment just outside Capitol Hill. My life's pretty straightforward. Wake up, chug black coffee, wrestle with Photoshop deadlines. Maybe hit a dive bar with friends on weekends. Nothing glamorous, just the grind of a guy figuring out where he fits in a city that feels too big sometimes. I've got no big love stories to tell either. A couple of college flings that fizzled out, nothing that stuck. Maybe I'm too picky, or maybe I just haven't met someone who feels real. My best friend since freshman year is Noah. We bonded over bad cafeteria food and a shared obsession with old sci-fi movies. He's the kind of guy who can make anyone laugh, even on their worst day. We've stayed tight even now that he's working some finance gig downtown. His mom, Sophia, has always been around, part of the background of our friendship. She's 42, a high school art teacher, the kind of person who's always put together but never flashy. I've known her for years, always thought of her as Noah's mom. Someone who'd ask if I wanted a soda or remind us to keep the noise down when we were playing video games late. She's been divorced since Noah was in high school, but I never pried. Not my place. To me, she was just there. Steady, kind, but untouchable, like someone from a different world. That Sunday afternoon, I was biking over to Noah's place in Fremont to return a book he'd lent me. A beat-up copy of Donnie we'd argued about for weeks. The air was crisp, the kind of Seattle fall day, where the sun fights through the clouds, but doesn't quite win. I leaned my bike against their fence, the same one I'd seen 100 times, painted white, but chipped in spots. Noah's car wasn't in the driveway, which was weird, but I figured I'd just drop the book and go. As I walked up the path, I saw Sophia out on the front porch, kneeling by a wooden planter filled with flowers, bright marigolds, and some purple ones I didn't know the name of. She was arranging them, her hands covered in dirt, wearing a loose white button-up tucked into faded jeans. Her caramel brown hair was swept up in a messy bun, a few strands catching the light. She looked focused, but there was something else, maybe tired, maybe lonely. I couldn't quite place it. I was about to turn back when she glanced up and caught me staring. "Ethan," she called, her voice warm but surprised. "Didn't expect to see you. Noah's out. I think he's at some work thing." "Oh," I said, holding up the book like it explained everything. "Just dropping this off. I can come back." She stood brushing dirt off her hands and smiled. "No, don't go. You got a minute? I could use a favor." I shrugged, curious. "Sure, what's up?" She gestured to the flowers. "I just put these together. Thought I'd take some pictures for my art class's Instagram. Inspire the kids. But I'm hopeless with a camera and there's no one around to help." She laughed, a little self-conscious. "You think you could snap a few?" I chuckled. "I'm no pro, Ms. Sophia. I just mess with Photoshop for work, but I'll give it a shot." She waved off the formality. "Just Sophia, please. You're not one of my students." I pulled out my phone, feeling a bit awkward, but game. She stood by the planter, the late afternoon sun, casting a soft glow across the porch. The cement wall behind her was rough, a perfect contrast to the flowers and her easy grace. I told her to tilt her head a little, maybe smile. She did, but it wasn't forced. It was like she was remembering something good. Her eyes, deep and a little sad, caught the light just right. I snapped 5 or 6 shots, adjusting angles to catch the way the sunlight hit her hair, the way her hands rested lightly on the planter. It wasn't just the flowers that looked good. When I showed her the photos, she leaned in close, her shoulder brushing mine for a second. "Oh my God," she said, her voice soft, almost disbelieving. I don't know, like I'm 30 again." She laughed, but there was a catch in it, like she hadn't expected to feel this way. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, it wasn't the polite smile I was used to. It was something else, open, unguarded, like she was seeing me for the first time, too. "You don't need to be 30 to look good," I said, then immediately felt my face heat up. It sounded like a line, but I meant it. She didn't laugh it off. She just looked at me, her lips parting slightly like she was trying to figure out what to say. "Thanks, Ethan," she said finally, her voice quieter. "Can you send me those?" I'd love to have them. Sure, I said. Where should I send them? She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. If you don't mind, I'll just put your number in here. Easier that way. I nodded, trying to act casual as she typed my number into her phone. My heart was doing something weird, like it knew this wasn't just about photos anymore. She sent me a quick text, a smiley face, and thanks again, and I sent the photos back. As I biked home, the book still in my bag, I couldn't stop thinking about that look in her eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. It was like she'd been waiting for someone to notice her, really notice her. I had that night after biking home from Sophia's place. I couldn't shake the image of her standing by those flowers, the way her eyes softened when she saw the photos. I tossed Dune on my coffee table, the book I'd forgotten to return, and flopped onto my couch, scrolling through the shots I'd taken. I hadn't noticed before how the light caught the curve of her cheek, or how her hands smudged with dirt looked so steady yet delicate. I told myself I was just proud of the photos, nothing more. But when my phone buzzed around 9 p.m., I nearly dropped it. It was Sophia. Her text was simple, but it hit like a curveball. Thank you, Ethan. Those photos made this middle-aged lady feel like she can still turn a head or two. A winking emoji followed, which felt both playful and out of character for the woman I'd always known as Noah's mom. I stared at the screen, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. What do you even say to that? I typed and deleted 3 different replies, each one sounding either too stiff or too flirty. Finally, I settled on, "You don't need magic to turn heads, Sophia. Just someone who knows how to see you." I hit send before I could overthink it, then spent the next 5 minutes wondering if I'd crossed a line. She was my best friend's mom, for God's sake. But when her reply came a quick, "You're sweet. Good night, Ethan," my pulse didn't slow down for a while. Over the next couple of days, I kept expecting things to go back to normal. I'd drop off the book, say hi to Noah, and Sophia would just be Sophia again. But she texted the next morning asking if I'd edited the photos in Photoshop. I hadn't and told her so, which led to a back and forth about my design work. She asked about my favorite projects. I asked about her art classes. It was light, easy, nothing heavy, but it was also new. I wasn't used to talking to her without Noah in the picture. 3 days later, my phone lit up again. Feel like grabbing a coffee. My treat for the photos. Her message read. I blinked at it, surprised. Noah hadn't mentioned anything about meeting up, and she didn't say he'd be there. I hesitated, then replied, "Sure. I'm free tomorrow afternoon. Name the place." She picked a small cafe by Lake Union, a cozy spot with wooden tables and a view of the water not far from her house. I told myself it was just a thank you, nothing more. The next day, I showed up at the cafe a few minutes early, wearing my usual jeans and a black hoodie, my hair still a mess from biking. The place smelled like roasted beans and fresh pastries with soft jazz playing in the background. Something old, maybe Ella Fitzgerald. Sophia was already there, sitting by the window with a ceramic mug in her hands. She wore a navy sweater and jeans, her hair loose, catching the gray Seattle light. She looked up as I walked in, and her smile was different. Not the polite one she'd always given me at Noah's house, but something warmer, like we were already friends. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Didn't expect you to beat me here." "I'm always early," she said, pushing a menu toward me. "Bad habit from teaching. Kids don't wait." She laughed, and I noticed the way her fingers traced the handle of her mug, like she was nervous, but trying not to show it. We ordered black coffee for me, a latte for her, and started talking. Not about Noah, which surprised me. She asked about my job, how I got into design, if I liked Seattle's rain or just tolerated it. I told her about my college days, how I'd stumbled into graphic design after failing at photography. She laughed, her eyes crinkling, and said, "Well, you're better at it than you think. Those pictures you took, they're not just good. They made me feel seen." I didn't know what to say to that. I just pointed and clicked. I mumbled, but she shook her head. "No, Ethan, you have an eye. You saw something I forgot was there." Her voice was quiet, and for a second, I caught that sadness in her eyes again, the same one from the porch. She told me about her art classes, how her students once painted a whole mural of fruit that ended up looking like abstract blobs. One kid turned an apple into an orange, she said, laughing. I didn't have the heart to correct him. The conversation flowed like we'd been doing this forever. She talked about loving Jazz Miles. Davis was her favorite and how she'd always wanted to travel to Paris to see real art galleries. I admitted I'd never been out of the States, but I'd sketched a few Parisian streets from photos for a project once. She leaned forward, genuinely curious, asking to see my work sometime. I promised I'd send her a few designs, feeling a little too eager. As we left the cafe, the sky was turning pink over Lake Union. She thanked me again, her hand brushing mine as she handed me the receipt she'd insisted on paying. This was nice, she said, her voice soft. Maybe we could do it again. A walk in the park if you're not too busy. Yeah, I said, my throat tighter than it should have been. I'd like that. I biked home the city, blurring past me. Her words stuck in my head. You saw something I forgot was there. It wasn't just about the photos anymore. I knew that. And as I parked my bike and checked my phone, there was a new text from her. Thanks for today. You're good company. I didn't tell Noah about the coffee. I wasn't sure why. The coffee with Sophia lingered in my mind longer than it should have. I kept replaying the way she'd leaned forward at the cafe, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. The way her laugh felt like it unlocked something in me. It wasn't just that she was Noah's mom. She was someone I was starting to see differently. Someone who made the gray Seattle days feel a little brighter. Over the next couple of weeks, our texts became a quiet routine. Nothing heavy, just small things. She'd send a photo of a painting her students made. I'd share a dumb meme about design clients. Felt easy, but there was an undercurrent like we were both circling something we weren't ready to name. We started meeting up more, always under the guise of something casual. Coffee turned into walks around Green Lake Park where the paths were lined with trees, just starting to turn red and gold. She'd point out little things, the way the light hit the water or a dog chasing its tail, and I'd find myself watching her more than the scenery. Sophia had this way of talking, like every word was chosen carefully but not forced. She told me about her love for jazz, how she'd sneak into clubs in her 20s to hear live music. I admitted I'd been listening to Miles Davis since our coffee trying to get it. She laughed, her eyes crinkling, and said, "You're trying too hard, Ethan. Just let it sink in." One afternoon, we ended up at her place helping her repaint an old wooden fence in her backyard. Noah was at work and the house was quiet except for the hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. She wore an old t-shirt and jeans paint splattered on her hands, and we worked side by side brushing white paint over weathered wood. I teased her about her technique, how she kept missing spots. She flicked paint at me, laughing, and for a moment it felt like we were just two people, not a 23-year-old and his best friend's mom. "You're not as bad at this as I thought," she said, smirking. I grinned back. High praise from the art teacher. Things shifted one stormy evening about a month after the photos. My phone buzzed as thunder rolled through Seattle. The kind of rain that makes the city feel like it's underwater. It was Sophia, her voice shaky over the line. "Ethan, I hate to bother you, but the power's out at my place. I'm not great with storms. You free to come over?" I didn't think twice. I grabbed a flashlight, a pack of candles from my kitchen drawer, and biked through the downpour, my hoodie soaked by the time I got to her house. She opened the door, looking smaller than usual, wrapped in a gray cardigan. "You didn't have to come," she said, but her eyes said she was glad I did. The house was dark, the only light coming from a faint glow outside. Noah was crashing at a friend's, she told me, which left just us. I set up the candles on her coffee table, their flickering light casting shadows across the living room. We sat on the couch, the air heavy with the smell of wax and rain. Outside, thunder rumbled and she flinched slightly, her hands twisting in her lap. "You really don't like storms, huh?" I said, trying to keep it light. She gave a small smile. "Silly, I know. Started when I was a kid. My dad used to sit with me, tell me the thunder was just the sky talking." But now she trailed off her eyes, drifting to a framed photo on the wall. A younger Noah, her ex-husband, and her smiling at some long-gone picnic. Now it just feels like the world's reminding me how small I am. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. She started talking, her voice soft but steady, like the candles had loosened something in her. She told me about her marriage, how it unraveled slowly, not with fights, but with silence. Her ex was always working, always distracted until she felt like a ghost in her own life. I was a mom, a teacher, a wife, she said, staring at the flames. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being Sophia. No one saw me. Not really. Not until she stopped, her eyes flicking to me, then away. I swallowed my throat tight. Not until what she looked at me, then her eyes catching the candlelight deep and unguarded. Until you took those photos. You saw something in me I thought was gone. I don't know how to explain it, Ethan, but you made me feel visible. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. You're not invisible, Sophia. I hesitated, searching for the right word. You're you, and that's enough. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked at me like she was trying to decide if I meant it. The thunder rolled again, softer now, and she scooted closer on the couch, her shoulder brushing mine. Have you ever felt like no one really sees you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought about it. My job, my friends. The way I blended into the background of my own life sometimes. Yeah, I said. More than you'd think. She nodded like she understood. We sat there, the candles burning low, the room warm despite the storm outside. I wanted to say more, to reach out, but I didn't. Not yet. There was something fragile in the air. Something we both felt, my heart still racing. As I walked back to my bike that night, the cool air hitting my face, I knew something had shifted. I didn't know where it was going, but I knew I couldn't pretend it wasn't happening, and I didn't want to. The night of Sophia's birthday left a mark I couldn't shake. That moment in the backyard, her hand in mine, her words about wanting to be seen. It was like a door had cracked open, letting light into a place I hadn't known was dark. I biked home under Seattle's starry sky, the cool air doing nothing to calm the buzz in my chest. I didn't sleep much that night, replaying her tear-streaked face, the way her fingers held onto mine like she was afraid to let go. I knew we were treading dangerous ground. Noah was my best friend, and Sophia was his mom. But what I felt wasn't just a fleeting crush. It was real, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Over the next few weeks, our connection grew quietly, like a secret we both guarded. We kept texting, nothing too intense, but steady, deliberate. She'd send me a photo of a new painting she was working on for her class, a swirl of blues and golds that reminded me of the lake we walked by. I'd reply with a quick sketch I'd done during a slow day at work, usually something silly like a cartoon dog. You're wasting your talent on doodles. She'd text back, followed by a smiley face. It was our rhythm, small, private moments that felt like they belonged only to us. Noah didn't know, and I carried that guilt like a weight in my pocket. But it wasn't enough to make me stop. We met up when we could, always careful. A quick coffee at that same Lake Union cafe or a walk through the park when Noah was at work. Each time I learned more about her, not just the art teacher or Noah's mom, but Sophia. She told me about her dreams of opening a small gallery someday, how she'd saved sketches from her 20s in a box under her bed. I told her about my fear of getting stuck in a job that didn't mean anything, how I sometimes felt like I was just going through the motions. She listened, really listened, her eyes steady on mine, and it made me feel like I mattered in a way I hadn't before. One afternoon, about a month after her birthday, my phone lit up with a text from her. Still got that photo I took of you as my lock screen. It read, "Makes me smile every time I see it." I stared at the message, my heart doing that thing again like it was trying to climb out of my chest. I typed back, "If you want a new one, I've still got my phone and plenty of time." A minute later, she replied with a single heart sticker. No words, just that. It was enough to keep me up that night wondering what we were doing, where this could possibly go. We hadn't defined anything, hadn't crossed any lines beyond that hand-holding in the backyard. But the air between us was different now, charged with something unspoken. I thought about telling Noah, but every time I imagined it, I saw his face confused, maybe angry, and I stopped myself. Sophia and I never talked about going public either. It was like we both knew it wasn't time, not yet. Maybe we were scared of what it would mean, what it would break. One evening, I was at my apartment working on a freelance logo design when she texted again. Free tomorrow. There's a new jazz club downtown. Thought we could check it out. I said yes without hesitating. And the next night, we sat in a dimly lit booth, listening to a saxophone hum through the room. She wore a black dress, simple but elegant, and I caught myself staring at the way her fingers tapped the table to the rhythm. We didn't talk about Noah or the future, just music, art, the way the city felt alive at night. As we walked out, she slipped her hand into mine for a moment, just long enough to feel real. On my way home, I thought about that first day, the photos on her porch, how it all started with a simple favor. I didn't know where we were headed, but I knew I didn't want it to end. Sophia had said I saw her, really saw her, and maybe she was doing the same for me. We weren't a couple, not yet. Maybe not ever. But we were something, two people who found each other in a way that felt like it mattered. As I parked my bike, my phone buzzed one last time. Her message was short. Thanks for tonight, Ethan. Let's do it again. I smiled, typing back anytime. And I meant it.